ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाखया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमो ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। So, Lord Kapila had described about what is the meaning of being self-realized. So in the beginning we saw he gave the explanation very nicely. One should be situated in the transcendental position beyond the stages of material consciousness. So he explained about what it is to be liberated. When we are saying somebody has become liberated, what does it mean? It means he is situated on transcendental plane, transcendental position, should be aloof from all other conceptions of life. His conception is from the plane of spiritual understanding, and he is free from mental conception, intellectual conception, all other conceptions of life he has become freed from. And then he also described, thus realizing freedom from false ego, one should see his own self just as he sees the sun in the sky. So he said that one has to become free from this ahankara, false ego, and then he can see himself, he can realize the self, just like we see the sun in the sky. Like that we will be able to see the self also. And then in the next verse, Lord Kapila had described, liberated soul realizes the absolute personality of Godhead, who is transcendental and who is manifest as a reflection even in the false ego. So, the person who has become liberated, not only he realizes the self, he realizes the absolute personality of Godhead, who even in our bondage, material condition of life, his energies are reflected. One can realize that. Who is manifest as a reflection even in the false ego. He is the support of material cause and he enters into everything. He is absolute and one without a second, and he is the eyes of the illusory energy. So, we saw that. Lord Kapila describes this. Next he describes, the presence of Supreme Lord can be realized just as the sun is realized first as a reflection on water and again as a second reflection on the wall of a room, although the sun itself is situated in the sky. So Lord Kapila then described that even while living in this material world, we can realize the Supreme Lord even though He may be very far, far away. The Supreme Lord can be realized just like the sun can be realized in a room by its reflection on the wall, by its reflection in the water pot. So like that a person can realize the Supreme Lord. Next, Lord Kapila had explained, the self-realized soul is thus reflected first in the threefold ego and then in the body, senses and mind. So, in Shuddha Sattva, when one is situated, then he understands his position of entanglement in material modes of nature. So Prabhupada explained, there is a difference between the conditioned soul and the person who has become liberated from condition of modes of nature. Conditioned soul thinks, I am this material body. Liberated soul thinks, I am servant of the Lord. So that means he has become free from false ego. Then Lord Kapila had also explained, externally you cannot make out. Externally it may look like there is no difference. Devotee is also looking like that the soul is merged in Panchabhuta. Correct. So he said, devotee appears to be merged in 5 material elements. The object of material enjoyment, the material senses and material mind and intelligence. But the difference, then Lord Kapila explained. Even though looking to be merged, he is understood to be awake and freed from false ego. This is very essential. Liberation means freedom from false ego. Liberation means being awake. When one has become awakened to the reality, that is called liberation. Even though one may be in the material world, he can be awake and he can be still free from false ego. So that is how Lord had described. Then Lord Kapila had also described that actually it is little difficult to understand this, because sometimes the conditioned soul thinks that my existence is lost at certain stages of life. The living entity can vividly feel his existence as the seer, but because of the disappearance of ego during the state of deep sleep, he falsely takes himself to be lost. Like a man who has lost his fortune and feels distress thinking himself to be lost. And then next Lord Kapila described, when by mature understanding one can realize his individuality, then the situation he accepts under false ego becomes manifest to him. So when he understands, I am part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, I am his servant, then he also understands the effect of false ego, how the living entity is working under the influence of false ego. He is able to understand. So practically, in all these verses, common thing we can see, Lord Kapila has been describing freedom from false ego. Actually, the glue which binds two different energies of the Lord, which are completely different from each other, completely different. Matter and spirit are completely different from each other. One is para, one is apara. One is inferior, one is superior. But That which binds the soul and the body together is the ahankara. It's like if you want to bind something, you require some gum, right? You require some glue. Then you can bind two objects to each other. So, Mother Devahuti is now asking this question. Very important question. Purusham Prakritir Brahman. O Brahmana, Purusham, the spirit soul which has come to enjoy in this material world, is referred to as Purusha. Prakritim, and this material nature, this material body and the material nature, that is called Prakriti. Na vimuchyati karhiche. It looks like there is no release. They are so much attached to each other, glued to each other, looks like soul cannot be released. Purusha cannot be released from Prakriti. Na vimuchyate karhiche. Why? Since one is attracted to the other eternally, how is their separation possible? Purusha looks like eternally attracted to Prakriti. So how is it practically possible to actually segregate and separate them? Because many places Lord Kapila has been telling that the false ego is over. It can be vanquished, it can be finished. That false ego which binds the spirit matter, the living entity can be liberated even while staying in this material body. He can be still detached from material body. So, Devahuti is asking this question, practically how it is possible? And then Prabhupada is very beautifully describing in the purport that even by knowledge, even by understanding, actually it is not possible. It's like all of us know that actually I am not this material body. But are we acting on transcendental platform? Are we acting free from three modes of material nature? Still whatever actions we are doing is impelled by modes of material nature. Correct? Even though with knowledge we may know I should not be doing this, but by this we know that actually some force is impelling me to act in a certain direction even though the soul does not want. Let us say, for example, devotee, he is preaching, he is being very careful, and he understands I should not associate with opposite sex. But as a preaching movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when living entities are coming, whether man or woman, I may have to go and preach to them. And then we find, let us say we take the risk of preaching, the modes of material nature are so strong that we get bewildered. Then all our knowledge is forgotten, gone for 6. And then we become impelled, we act in certain direction. And that is why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given very strict warning to the ones who are pursuing Krishna consciousness. Just imagine what kind of example Mahaprabhu is giving. Just few days back when we were reading, right? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not want to meet King Pratap Rudra because he said, pound and shilling man attached to wealth and woman, I cannot meet him. And he said for a sannyasi it is suicidal. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave the example, just by seeing the form of a woman, not even real woman, just by seeing the form. Let us say you walk in the road and just have a look at some, shape of a woman in the form of some plastic or through fiber they make. Even just by seeing that wooden form, mind can become agitated. So much is the attraction for Purusha and Prakriti. Just imagine. This is what Devabhuti is saying. So much eternally. And then still we think, no, don't worry. I am preaching on behalf of Krishna consciousness. Nothing is going to happen. No. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said we have to be very careful. Even seeing just the form of a wooden woman, actually we can become bewildered. What to talk about, talking, conversing, and it's quite difficult in that sense. That's why restraint is very important. There is a saying in English, out of sight is out of mind. It's a reality. This kind of restraint is required for as far as possible. Where it is, very difficult. Sometimes one may think, no, okay, brahmachari, it is understandable. Grahastha, no problem. Grahastha, it is all right. No! Either brahmachari or grahastha, vanaprastha, sannyasi, everybody has to be careful in preaching Krishna consciousness. You see. So, important is restraint. Because we can see, this is a truth which Devabhuti is revealing, that they are eternally attracted to each other. Purusha is attracted to Prakriti. Whether it is so-called Purusha and Prakriti, male and female, or whether it is as an enjoyer attracted to material world, that is also Prakriti. So that attraction is always there and very difficult to get out. So Prabhupada is giving an example that actually it is truth. Just by understanding it is not possible. They are so intermingled that without one you cannot understand other in conditioned life. Without one the other looks absent. Prabhupada is giving the example. I'll read this, very beautiful. Although one may understand spirit, soul and matter are different, their actual separation is not possible either by philosophical speculation or by proper understanding. Philosophical, maybe person is thinking, I am not this hand, I am not this leg, I am not this mind, I am not, like this is speculating and trying to understand what am I. Or even with proper understanding, as we understand from Bhagavad Gita where Krishna is telling your spirit, soul, even with proper understanding, actual separation is not possible just by theoretical understanding. It is not possible. The spirit soul is the marginal potency of the Supreme Lord. Matter is external potency of the Lord. The two eternal potencies somehow or other have been combined. And since it is so difficult to separate one from the other, how is it possible for the individual soul to become liberated? So this is what Devhuti is asking. So difficult to separate ourselves from matter. How really it is possible to become liberated? And Lord Kapila has described, no, it is very much possible. Not only to become separated, even while living in the body it is possible. Even while living in the matter, living in material world, it is possible. So that is how Devhuti is asking. So much they are glued to each other, so much they are attracted to each other. Is it really possible to be liberated? So Prabhupada is saying theoretically not possible. Not possible. And then very beautiful example Prabhupada is giving. By practical experience, one can see when soul is separated from the body, body has no real existence. We are no more attracted to the body. When the soul you separate, body loses its charm. Value of body is finished. Correct? And then, when the body is separated from the soul, one cannot perceive the existence of the soul. Where we are saying that the soul has passed away, it has gone to another body or it has gone somewhere, where are we able to perceive? When the body is alive, we are able to perceive something. Liveliness is there, actions are there, we are able to perceive that yes, there may be something called soul. But the moment the body is gone, when the soul has gone out of the body, cannot perceive the soul at all. So in the conditioned life, to perceive the soul, body is required. Isn't it? They're so glued. That is the whole idea. The combination is like this. When they are separated, there is no manifested existence of the body or the soul. This question, asked by Devahuti or of Kapila Dev, is more or less impelled by the philosophy of voidism. Why this is impelled by the philosophy of voidism? Because in ultimate sense, according to the philosophy of voidism, everything came out from void. It has become manifested for some time, and after some time when it is dismantled, it will merge into the void. That is their whole idea. So this attraction between spirit and matter, they say, is temporary, and once you get nirvana, once you dissolve this false ego, according to them, then it merges. Again it is void, nothing is there, no one to perceive, because everything is void. So that is what Devahuti is saying, that without soul, without spirit, body has no value. Without body, spirit has no value. Isn't it? So, again in the next shloka also we will find similar very good example Devahuti is going to give. Later on, we will find Lord Kapila explaining, yes, this is possible and how it is possible. This is possible only by surrendering to the Supreme Lord, who is the controller of both the Prakritis. Krishna says that in Bhagavad Gita also, and same thing will be confirmed by Lord Kapila also. Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita, Mameva prapadhyante maya metam tarantite. If someone surrenders unto me, it is very much possible. Maya metam tarantite. He can cross over this ocean of nescience. Otherwise, Krishna says, Mama Maya Durattaya. Not possible. By our endeavor to separate spirit, soul from matter, not possible. See. So someone asked this question to Prabhupada. Prabhupada, how is it possible that so much, because of this false ego, we are so much in the bodily conception of life that we are not able to come out of the pains and pleasure of this body? How do you explain this? So Prabhupada gives a very beautiful example to make us understand. Consciousness, when it has become absorbed in matter, it identifies itself with matter. He forgets that actually I am spirit soul, and he identifies himself with matter. So anything happens to the matter or his body, he thinks it is happening to me. You see? Most he identifies with his body, and that is why the suffering to this body he thinks my suffering. And the more he identifies something connected to the body, their suffering also he thinks my suffering. My child is suffering, I suffer. My neighbor is not suffering. See? My body is suffering, third person, none of you will be suffering. We go so many, just like we see the example. The doctor is going every day, he is seeing people suffering. He is not suffering from the pain of that. But when his body will suffer, he will suffer. When his child is going to suffer, he will suffer. Third person is not suffering because he is not absorbed. His mind is not absorbed in that. Our mind, our consciousness is completely absorbed in me and mine. This absorption is the cause of suffering. And very simple example Prabhupada gives. Somebody is very attached to his new brand car. Something happens to his car, he suffers. Practically heartbroken. Isn't it? Nothing has happened to him. But so much absorbed in his vehicle, he suffers. This is only one single simple example. There at least a person knows I can buy a new car. Isn't it? Imagine how much is the absorption in this material body. From childhood up to death, this body is with us. How much is the absorption in this material body? So that is called as false ego. And because of that, so much suffering. So how it is possible? By theoretical knowledge, we can only understand and try to tolerate. That's all. Just like Krishna gave knowledge to Arjuna. My dear Arjuna, why are you on the bodily platform? You are not this material body, your spirit, soul, they are not going to die. Your grandfather is not going to die, he is going to be eternally there. Isn't it? So that slowly he can come out of the bodily conception of life. And then Krishna is telling, if you can understand, very good. If you cannot understand, tolerate. What else can be done? Somebody is going to die, he is going to die. Either with knowledge you can come out of that sorrow and understand, no, the soul does not die, does not matter. If you cannot understand, what can be done? You have to tolerate. Is there any other thing you can do? Nothing you can do. Isn't it? But to really come out of bodily conception is possible. By the mercy of the Lord, it is possible. And that's how we find Haridas Thakur so much absorbed in Krishna that he never identified himself with his body. When he was beaten, if a normal person is beaten, 21 marketplaces, how can a person tolerate like that? Isn't it? Prahlad Maharaj, so much absorbed in the Lord, that he has so much torture to this body he was able to tolerate. Because his mind is completely absorbed in the Supreme Lord. So it is possible. By the mercy of the Lord, it is possible. So one can come out only by surrendering to the Supreme Lord. It is only by His mercy one can actually become liberated from the effect of three modes of material nature. Otherwise it is not possible. So that will be explained later on by Lord Kapila. We'll stop with this. Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai.